Hello, everybody. Welcome to this convention prep episode of Beware the Board, a horror podcast. We watch a randomly selected horror movie every single week. I'm Bob.
I'm Ben, and we're not doing that right now. You keep doing the same intro.
How many times? We're going to have this argument every episode, and the audience is going to get sick of hearing it. I'm telling you again, if you want me to do a different intro, write me a new one, and I'll do it.
And every time I'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll give you the same suggestion. And I give you the same suggestion every time. I'm like, just say, we're watching.
But are you writing it down and giving it to me? Are you
No.
scripting me?
No.
Then I don't care.
I think you're just a bad horror host. That's why I'm the better one.
No,
In either
you're the better
case-
one for other reasons. There are many other reasons you're
Like,
the better
he
one.
just stuck with it. All right, well, today we're watching Phantasm.
Phantasm.
Yes.
Similar to
Similar to what?
what is that one movie with the Deathgasm?
Yes.
Name similar.
The asm in both of those words is very different.
Yeah. Well, a phantasm is like a ghost, right? Ooh, spooky.
Essentially.
And a deathgasm is coming when you die, I guess. I don't know. It's never happened to me
Yet.
That's right.
I'm glad we timed that together. So yeah, Phantasm. You've never seen this movie.
No, I haven't, but one of our mutual friends really likes it.
Yeah, one of Bob's old roommates.
Yeah, he actually specifically said he really likes the second one.
That's fair. I know why he likes the second one,
Yeah.
too. And I can't say it because it's a spoiler. In either case, Phantasm came out in 1979.
This is, wow,
So
okay.
it's an older movie.
I did not realize this was going to be a 70s film.
Yeah.
I dig a 70s movie.
Well, barely a 70s movie.
I mean, just like you're barely a 90s kid.
What are you talking about?
Ben, I swear to God, I can't handle that right now. I'll leap across this fucking table and strangle you on the mic. I'll do it.
Anyways, description. By the way, what do you know about this movie?
I've seen the trailer.
Okay. Do you know anything else?
No, but I know the tagline. Well, the tagline's something funny.
Oh, well then I'll go with. I'll tell you my description. I'm not sure if you're gonna get it, but
Okay.
Bob thinks he's in this movie.
I do not know what the fuck you're talking about.
Oh, that's gonna be great. We'll see when you figure it out. Let me know during the movie. Length, it's an hour and 29 minutes long.
Okay.
It's rated R.
Thank God.
Review scores, IMDb gave it a 6.6 out of 10.
That's pretty good.
Tomato meter score of 74%. And an audience score of 67%.
These are high scores. And
Yeah.
I'm higher than I expected.
Yeah, lots of people like Phantasm.
I'm excited.
I think it's going to be one of those films where either you're going to like it or you're going to be bored out of your mind.
A Blair Witch situation.
Yeah. I wouldn't compare it so much to Blair Witch, more so to something like Suspiria,
Oh.
where it's just a little bit weird.
Okay.
So either you're going to kind of dig with the vibe it's given out or you're not. Awards, 2 wins, 2 nominations.
That's pretty good.
Notable actors, Angus Scrimm as the Tall Man.
I've heard Tale of the Tall Man.
He played Father Shellnut, and John dies at the end.
I haven't seen that, but I've heard that movie's good.
A. Michael Baldwin as Mike Pearson. He played Billy Salcedo in Flay. Bill Thornberry as Jody Pearson. He played Rob Wolf in The Lost Empire. Reggie Bannister as Reggie. He played Edgar Friendly Sr. in Bojangles.
Bojangles.
Not to be confused with Bojangles.
Oh, okay. The fried chicken place?
Yeah, the fried chicken place.
Okay.
Don't get confused.
Don't get two very different
One of
things.
them's delicious.
The other one, you maybe could eat. Bone jangles? You could eat some bone jangles.
Too bony.
Not
Not enough,
jangly?
not enough chicken. Kathy Lester as Lady in Lavender. She really hasn't done anything outside of this series, but she did play the attending nurse in Phantasm 3.
Oh, okay.
Bill Cohn as Tommy, who hasn't done anything else.
Damn.
Mary Ellen Shaw as Fortune Teller. She was in Kenny and Company as Last Trick or Treat. Terry Colbus as the Fortune Teller's granddaughter. She played Marcy in Kenny and Company. And then Lynn Eastman Rossi as Sally. And she played Sergeant Huntley in Project X.
I have not seen that movie, but I've heard it's buck wild.
Writer and director's Don Coscarelli. Have you heard that name before?
No.
Okay. He's done some cool films.
Okay.
Weird films, but cool films. Just to name like a few that are more famous. The Beastmaster. Do you know Beastmaster?
No.
Bubba Hotep, which we talked about before.
We have talked about Bubba Hotep.
Do you remember who that has in it?
Oh God. It was somebody like mega famous.
Bruce Campbell,
It was Bruce Campbell.
who plays Elvis. And then he also did John Dies at the End. Which I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I have not seen, but I've heard it's a good movie.
But it's weird. So, kind of just all weirdish films. Beastmaster is like kind of a Conan the Barbarian inspired kind of film,
That's cool.
but with a Beastmaster.
Wow.
Budget's estimated at $300,000 with a box office turnout of $11.98 million.
That's not too
So-
bad.
That's not just not too bad. That's great. $300,000, Bob.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you. I thought you said 3 million.
Oh, I might have. Who fucking knows?
I thought maybe I'm stupid and I misheard you, or maybe you did say that.
I'm very tired. But $300,000,
to 11 million.
nearly 12.
Nearly 12. Okay, yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
One might say phantasmic. Oh.
No. Country of origins is United States, also known as the working title, which is Morningside.
Okay.
Tagline: if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead.
Oh, I didn't know that was the tagline. I
What
thought
you
I
thought
knew
the
the tagline.
tagline was?
I've seen the trailer, and at one point, don't they go like, "This horror movie has balls"?
That is a tagline they use.
Yes.
Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get into some facts for this movie. Right off the bat, this film is kind of mega famous. At the very least, it's a cult classic.
I was about to say, I know a lot of people in the horror space really like it.
Lots of people
The
like
dude
it.
that we know that likes it doesn't like horror movies very much and loves this film.
No, yeah. And there's number of people who are really famous who are fans of this franchise. Believe J.J. Abrams is one,
That's awesome.
among others. In either case, it has spawned a number of sequels.
Yeah.
It has 4. And very interestingly, they come out at vastly different times. So
Really?
the sequel to this movie came out in 1988.
So not too long.
The third one came out in 1994. The fourth one in 1998. And then the most recent one in 2016.
2016 that's a fucking leap.
Which is a wild jump. I don't know. I think that's just a wide range.
It is a really wide range. I mean, the first one came out in the 70s. The most recent came out in almost 2020s, late 2010s.
Oh, yeah. It's insane.
That's crazy.
That's like the lifespan of people,
Yeah.
let alone a franchise. In either case, what this movie comes from what I could tell, is kind of two things. So it is inspired in part by a dream that Coscarelli had as like a child/teenager
That's cool.
that kind of freaked him out. So he grabbed some elements from that and added it to the movie, as well as some general inspiration, at least vibe-wise, from the novel Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury.
I've never read it, but I've heard it's really, really good.
Yeah. From what I could find, it looked like Coscarelli wanted to originally adapt that work,
Oh, that would be so cool.
but the rights had already been sold.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, I'll just make my own. And so that's how we got this movie. Essentially, again, from what I could find, Coscarelli at this time was a amateur filmmaker, essentially. He wanted to get into the film industry, but was struggling, and he had previously made, I'm not sure how many, I know he made at least one film that didn't do well. That previous film was Kenny and Company.
Okay.
If you remember, I mentioned
Yeah, there were a couple actors that
a
were
couple
also in
actors
that.
from it. Thing to note here is that he had basically heard, after doing those films and those not doing financially well, that horror was like a sure thing. Because, I mean, honestly, in the 80s,
I was about to say right before 80, you probably had a good shot.
it was starting to be. So he wanted to get into horror because he thought it would be more of a financial success. So that's why we got this.
Clearly it was.
Kind of other fun facts here. The soundtrack was influenced by Mike Oldfield, apparently, and Goblin.
Oh, yeah, there we
I
go.
figured you know Goblin. Lots of synth stuff. Apparently that was kind of hard because they had like a shitty synth. So
That's
it was
awesome.
hard to like reproduce sounds they made multiple times. So better hope you did it right
The first time.
the first time. Or whatever time you liked it. And I think that kind of adds on to this fact that this whole production was super amateur.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, if you could pick up on that already, basically the entire film was locally funded. I know one of the biggest investors is I believe it's the executive producer, but it's Coscarelli's father.
That's
and
awesome.
then the rest of the funders for it were just like local lawyers and doctors. But yeah, most of the cast and crew were just like local people, whether they were friends of Coscarelli and his family. For instance, I think his mom did makeup,
Oh, that's so sweet.
or like wannabe actors or
Mhm.
professionals. That's just who most of the people are. For instance, Reggie Bannister, who's playing Reggie, is, from what I could find, quite literally playing a version of himself. He was friends with Coscarelli, and Coscarelli essentially wrote Reggie Bannister as Reggie Bannister.
That's awesome. That's such a fun thing.
Yeah, in either case, kind of cool to see that essentially this was a group project between a bunch of local people. Kind of shocking to see it did so well, though. But
I mean, I think that's it. A lot of the times, some of the coolest movies that we watch on the podcast are where things where people just go like, I'm just going to get some people I know, we're going to make a thing. And it turns out well, and it's always fun.
yeah, that does happen sometimes. I don't think that's always a plan for success, but it is
No,
always
but it's cool.
cool to see it turn out well. Night of the Living Dead's another fun example
That was
of that.
what I was going to break up was a lot of Romero films.
But it does have some issues. I know Coscarelli did a bunch of stuff, like, technically himself, because he didn't have anyone else to do it. In either case, last couple things to mention. This film is set in Oregon, from what I could find.
Oh.
But shooting took place primarily in San Fernando Valley and Chatsworth, California. And then post-production took a long time. It apparently took 6 to 8 months.
Damn.
And from what I could find, there's a number of reasons that was. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of people to do post-production. It was Coscarelli. But it's also due to, like, kind of how they shot the film. Apparently, the script was all over the place during filming. Like, they were just constantly rewriting it. And they also didn't have a firm set ending decided
Really?
when they were filming, so they filmed multiple.
That's awesome.
So there was just a lot of editing required for the film to be in a finished state. Not to mention, I think the first version of the film didn't do really well on a test screening, so they recut it and everything. So yeah. Anyways, that's Phantasm. It's going to be a little bit weird.
Well, I mean,
Hopefully you like it.
I like weird stuff usually.
You usually like weird stuff. But I will say I think it is one of those films where either you're gonna like it or you're just gonna be like, that was something.
Well, we'll find out. We'll see you guys after the movie. Hi everybody, welcome back. We just finished watching Phantasm.
With a PH, not to be confused with Phantasm with an F.
Oh, sorry, what do you call Phantasm with an F?
I believe so. I think it's from Australia.
What is it about? Fanta?
I don't actually know. I came up while I was searching.
Well, didn't know I need to be more specific.
You don't really. This movie's much more famous. But yeah, we just finished Phantasm. What did you think, Bob?
I thought it was cool.
I figured you would. It's a weird movie.
It is a weird movie.
And you like weird movies.
No, it's definitely strange.
In either case, usual spiel here. We're going to talk about the film. We're going to give like a brief rundown, and then we'll actually get into spoilers. But as always, we recommend you go into the film blind. Give it a watch. I do think Phantasm is worth a watch. Whether or not you like it, I think that depends on kind of the person you are, because either this is going to vibe with you or it's not. But I think it is worth seeing just for how famous it is. It's a very well-known IP.
Oh, yeah.
With that being said, the premise of this film is fairly straightforward. We're following this kid. His name's Mike, and he is freaked out about this tall man that works as the, essentially mortician, undertaker at the local funeral home, Morningside. Is it Morningside? Okay.
It's Morningside. Yeah.
At Morningside, and he thinks he might be out of this world.
Okay.
Anyways, it's a little bit of a fever dream, but it's cool. In either case, we're gonna get into it. Is there anything you want to start with?
Yeah, okay, so here's my thing. I like this movie, but I totally get if you watch it and you go, I don't like this. Like, I totally understand. Because, like, I like it because it's weird and I think it's interesting and fun, but also it has, like, old B-movie, like, horror charm that I enjoy. And if you're not into that, you will not like this movie.
Yeah, I think I kind of fall into the camp of, it's not that I dislike this movie, but I don't necessarily groove on it. Like, it's just not my favorite movie ever.
Totally fair.
I'm kind of impartial on it. And, it's not for any of the reasons you said, because you're right, it does have that old B-movie charm, which I actually think is pretty sweet. But my main issue with this film is it's just very slow.
It is extremely slow.
And very, I'm going to use the word ephemeral, but dreamlike is kind of the word.
Yeah.
To describe it. And I don't know, that doesn't make for a super interesting watch, I think, all the time.
Yeah.
This film has certain moments of intensity and action that I think are really, really great.
They're very effective.
And I just wish there was more of that and less of just like spooky hallway a guy's walking down. I guess it's kind of my same complaint with the original Suspiria, where it's like, this is a very artistic piece. Like, there's a vision being achieved here, but I wish there was more stuff, more plot.
Yeah. And I mean, I see the complaint, but I don't think the movie is as effective if you put more stuff in it.
No, and I don't think that's an issue with the movie. I'm putting that out there of, if you can't get into it because it's built that way, it can be a rough film. Just kind of slow and boring.
It's just a straight vibes thing. Like, it's like, if you like the vibe that the film is going for, you will enjoy the film. But if you are not a fan of the vibe and the tone it's going for, you're just probably not going to have a good time. Like, if you're going into this expecting, like, an intense sort of slasher film of any kind, it's not that.
No.
It's a weird, ephemeral, like, fever dream of a movie that very much plays with the idea of things being unreal.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's super effective at that. There's a number of ways they kind of achieve that effect. They do some weird slow-mo shots.
Oh, I love those.
My favorite is there's a sequence of the tall man just walking past one of the characters, Reggie, as he's opening like his ice cream truck door with some dry ice in it.
Yeah.
And just like sniffing the fog. But I think one of the biggest things that make the film very ephemeral is the music.
Oh, the music is so good at that.
The music's really synthy and just like weird.
I would describe it as like otherworldly.
Yeah.
Like, and that's sort of the vibe it's going for. Like, it's all these really long, like, droning noises and like these long, like, low tones of like boom. And like, I don't know, it's just really cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I think the music really carries the tone of this film really hard, but I think both of those things combine together really well.
Yeah,
just the cinematography and the music to create just a cool atmosphere. I think that's kind of
the big thing about this movie.
The big thing for this movie. With that being said, I think the other really great element that adds to that atmosphere, but also just adds to the feel of this movie in general, is the tall man.
Yeah, Tall Man's fucking awesome.
The actor who plays him, Angus Scrimm, just does an amazing job.
He is so... He almost passes as sort of a just creepy-looking old man who happens to work at a funeral home, but then you see him actively being a menace on screen, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those times where you can tell it was like a perfectly cast role.
Yeah.
And it's very specifically the way the actor sells it that makes the whole franchise. But yeah, the tall man's just iconic. Essentially, it's a guy with like platform shoes and an extra small suit to make him look weirdly gargantuan and skinny. But the way he just plays him as a very like unhuman character, like he doesn't functionally understand how the human body works.
There's some really funny scenes,
really effective,
where like he like goes to attack someone and he just does the most absurd thing you've ever witnessed. But it's like oddly terrifying because you don't expect him to react like that.
Yeah, it's just awkward. Like at one point he knocks on a door And when we see the door open, he's got his hand like backwards to the camera, but all his fingers are curled down.
Yeah.
And then he goes from that position to just grabbing. And it's a very like robotic and not human. And there's just tons of little stuff like that with the tall man, just where he doesn't feel
real.
like a real person. And that's all super well done. It makes what shouldn't be super menacing feel otherworldly and wild.
I mean, I think the other thing that makes this film feel so like weird and dreamlike is they do some really interesting cinematography stuff where the camera will be following stuff like floating through the air, or like just following stuff in general, or shot from really weird angles that it should not be.
Yeah.
Which I think is really fun.
Like I said, the cinematography is bizarre.
Yeah.
Again, it's amateurish, but it really works for the way this film is supposed to feel.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
I think is one of the super cool things about horror movies.
Yeah.
Because you can do films that take advantage of, like, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing.
Well, I think the other thing that also helps with all of this like tone and atmosphere stuff is they do a really fun thing where multiple characters have nightmares. And a lot of the time, they're not framed as nightmares at first. They're framed as reality that slowly gets revealed as a nightmare throughout. And then by the end of it, they wake up and, we learn it's a nightmare. But it's very good at tricking you into stuff like that.
Yeah, the transitions are smooth. So
They're very smooth.
it blurs the lines between what's real and what isn't.
Like, I think the whole nightmare that Mike has with the tall man in the gravestones is so fucking sweet. Where he just wakes up and he's standing over him and they're coming out of the graves and attacking him. It's so good.
Yeah, and there's a ton of stuff like that.
It's really cool.
And then I think the last thing to mention here that really does give the film like that weird dreamlike aesthetic is some of the sets.
Oh, the funeral home looks so fucking cool.
That is the most obvious one. The funeral home is obviously like a set, like it's not a real place, but it's like this super liminal, like white marble, featureless room. It's super cool.
So
it,
dope.
Again, feels very otherworldly. Now, outside of all that stuff, like all the weird stuff that makes this film seem very dreamlike, there's also just some bizarre stuff in the movie that I think is worth mentioning. Right off the bat, there's like a weird psychic lady.
Oh, yeah.
She's only in the movie for a little bit, but I say she's a psychic lady because she's spoken for by her granddaughter, assumedly, who can understand her.
Even though she's not saying anything.
And make boxes appear out of thin air. And maybe can see the future.
Possibly.
I don't know. Just random psychic. But thought I should mention that. But the big thing I want to mention for like weird stuff, outside of the tall man, is this film heavily features Jawas.
This film does heavily feature the Jawas from Star Wars.
Yep. If you don't know what we're talking about, they're the short guys with the hoods and the yellow eyes.
That live on Tatooine.
They live on Tatooine. We see them a lot in episode 4, the original Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in this movie, like a lot. And I just want to point out, episode 4 came out in, I think, 1977.
It had already been out, yes.
And this movie came out in 79. Assumedly, they were shooting it 77, 78.
Yeah.
But assumedly, they knew what they were doing.
Yes. Absolutely, they had to have. They even make weird noises like the Jawas do. It's not the same.
No.
It's not like, Houdini! Like, it's not like that. But it's very, like...
It sounds like a growl or a scraping sound.
Yeah.
Although our closed captioning describes it as warbling.
Warbles, but it's not that.
And, the film calls them dwarves.
The film does... Well, they're just short people.
They're just short people. Assumedly, they were child actors.
Yeah.
In
prosthetics.
Jawa costumes.
Well, yeah, that.
But they're just like a fun, weird addition to this movie.
Well, they're like... Not to be too spoilery, but they're like the tall man's minions.
Yeah, I mean, that's fairly obvious.
They do his bidding and like run around and cause chaos and kill people and shit and abduct people. They're cool. I actually really like them. I think they're because we don't know what they are, so the reveal of what they are takes so long that like at the beginning of the movie you don't know what you're seeing at first. Because a lot of the early shots of them are just like you'll just see a cloak get behind a gravestone or something and hide, and it won't explain what's happening. Like you'll never actually see what it was. So I think they're actually a very effective, like, creepy thing that makes the ephemeral, like, dreamlike state work because it feels like they could be ghosts or something because you don't know what they are. It could be a supernatural thing.
I mean, yeah, they're essentially featureless, cloaked figures.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the tall man also just transforms into a woman at one point.
A lot.
Twice, 2 or 3 times.
More than that.
That's also worth mentioning.
Yeah. Well, Tall Man just transforms into a woman and does some stuff to some people.
I bet you can't guess what.
Yep.
In either case, do you have anything else to talk about with this film?
Okay, now to the negatives.
Okay.
These have all been positive things so far, I think. And I've liked all these things.
Oh, there's some interesting creature effects.
that too. We haven't talked about that.
I don't want to get too much into that, but that's
Because that is spoilery.
what I'll
sort of.
say.
And I don't really... Because look, the end of this movie is kind of wild.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a spoiler section.
I don't want to talk about it at all if we don't have to. But the end of this movie and also the reveal of what the dwarves are and what they're doing is fucking insane to me. And I love it. Like, that's
Yes.
one of my favorite parts about the movie. But before we get there, I will admit, this movie has some problems. I don't particularly like the performance from the dude that plays Jody or Mike all that much. They're okay. Like, I think most of the acting in and around the characters in this film is fine, with some standouts being the tall man,
Who does absolutely
an
amazing.
excellent job, and maybe Reggie has some moments. But I think
Yeah.
that's more to do with the writing rather than it is the actual acting.
And also, again, from what I know, Reggie's character is based on Reggie himself.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit easier.
But I just don't love the dynamic between Mike and Jody because it doesn't feel very strong. Like, because the whole point of them is like they're brothers, so there should be like this like brotherly connection of like I need to protect my younger brother, like all this other stuff, and it comes across, but it's not as effective as it could be.
Fair enough. I will put this out here that part of that is because there's also supposed to be a little bit of a rift between them.
Yeah,
Like Jody doesn't really want to be raising Mike. And I'll also add here, I know you said you didn't necessarily like Mike's acting, but I think the character's really well written.
the character's good.
Like outside of the acting, which I have trouble saying is bad because I think the film uses Mike so effectively.
Yeah, no, I mean I totally get that. I guess I wanted more nuance and more of a connection between the two because I want when these bad things start happening to both of them, I wanted more of an emotional punch to it. You know
That's
what I mean?
fair. But I will say again, it's a fairly amateur production, so most of these
Yeah.
people hadn't really acted before,
That's fair.
or had only done it once or twice. So I think that is important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
If we're gonna continue with negatives, we talked about how this film feels very dreamlike, but the downside of that is sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense,
True.
especially if you're taking stuff at face value, and I do think that is something to consider. Same note of not a lot happens in this movie.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're not vibing with the vibe, it's very easy to get bored,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you've seen it before. Like, I've seen this movie a couple times. It was a rough watch today because I'm very tired right now.
Totally get it. And I could see how watching this again for another time isn't as rewarding because I feel like a lot of what makes this film good is the initial watch because you get all the payoff of all of these things being revealed to you. Because I'm going to be honest, it throws some fucking curveballs at you
Yeah.
that are not at all expected and they're pretty sweet. And that's like the big thing I think about this movie.
All right. So, I know you said you didn't necessarily want to do it, but I think we should do a spoiler section because I do want to talk about some of the stuff regarding the tall man and the Jawas. But especially I want to talk about the ending.
Sure. Yeah, we could do it.
Because I think there's some twists and turns in this movie that are really weird.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be remiss to not talk about them because I do want to talk about the themes of this movie, and I kind of need to talk about the ending to do that.
Okay, yeah, we can hit it.
Also, there's some weird stuff to talk about with how this affects the franchise.
I was about to say, there's another one after this.
There is
Three
four
more.
more.
Yep, 4 more.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, you hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah,
did you?
no, I hadn't considered that when I thought about the end of this movie.
So, we're going to do that right now. Either tune in or don't, depending on what you want.
Hello, everybody. This is Future Bob coming at you to let you know that if you do not want any major spoilers for this film, to please skip to 40 minutes and 13 seconds immediately. Once again, for no major spoilers about the end of this film, please skip to 40 minutes and 13 seconds right now.
Okay, so if you're sticking around, spoilers.
Yeah.
From here on out, like big spoilers. Okay, so right off the bat, Tall Man,
Yeah.
probably an alien.
Definitely an alien.
He's filled with yellow goo,
Just like the dwarves.
and his cut off fingers turn into bug rat things.
Scary little monsters.
Bob did not like them.
Did not like that.
Was it because it was spider-like,
Yes.
but it could fly?
Yes.
And
it
it
was
had-
spider and bug-like. I didn't like that.
Yeah, with a little rat face.
Oh. Ugh.
It's not like a great puppet effect, but they do sell it.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool looking. So he's probably an alien, and I think the general consensus that at least Mike comes to, but I think some of the other characters, is that the tall man is this being from another planet, and he's taking the dead corpses of humans and then using them as slaves on his planet, which is like a desolate hellscape.
Yep.
I say planet, it could maybe also be another dimension.
Yeah, we assume it's a planet
Either
because
or.
that's what the characters come to.
And when he takes the humans to the other planet to like prep them for work there, he condenses them to make them stronger and more resistant to the planet's increased gravity and heat. So the Jawas are like the rotting, reanimated corpses of all the dead people that this the tall man has like done the funerals for, which is a fun reveal.
Mike's mom and dad.
Because Mike's mom and dad, we don't get to see, but we do see their empty coffins.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy, who's like the first death in the movie.
Yep.
And we get to see him. He looks kind of weirdly rotten,
Mm-hmm.
and there's yellow goo coming out of him, which
Ugh.
same stuff as the tall man. I think all that's pretty cool.
It is cool.
Also, I think they shrink the Jawas in like barrels.
Yep.
I'll Return of the Living Dead,
Which is cool.
which again I really like. But they do this whole thing where they transport people through these two silver rods.
It's like a portal.
Yeah, it's a portal. It's one of the best effects I think in the movie, where it's like Mike sticks his hand through the rods and we see it disappear.
Yep.
Great special effects. I don't know if you got the symbolism of the rods. They're supposed to be, so every time we saw them, there was a humming noise.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to be reminiscent of a tuning fork, which we see Reggie
which you see Reggie
stop
fucking with
earlier in the movie when he's playing guitar, and we see Reggie
grab the two things
tuning
and stops
forks.
the humming.
Yeah.
Which causes the tall man to have a fucking seizure.
Which it causes the portal to essentially implode. It sucks everything in.
Yeah.
And destroys the funeral parlor. Additionally, we've mentioned the tall man can shapeshift.
Yep.
He mostly shapeshifts into a woman. I will say the ending of this film, not the ending, but what they end up doing is they eventually trick the tall man into falling down a mine shaft that's 1,000 feet deep.
Yep.
And then
drop rocks on him.
yeah, Jody and Mikey drop a bunch of boulders on him and trap him down there. Sadly, though, Reggie dies.
Yeah, Reggie does die.
In the ensuing scuffle. Now, all that's really cool. I think this is like a really weird backstory for this film, but it is interesting. The kind of curveball that we get is with the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
So up until the last, 3 minutes.
I was going to say like 5 minutes maybe.
What I just described is the world that's been built for this movie. However, right after we see the tall man get trapped in this well, this mine shaft or whatever, we see Mike wake from a dream. And we cut to Mike supposedly probably describing the whole events of the movie to Reggie, who's alive, and who tells us that Mike's freaked out and is having this bad dream because Jody's funeral was last week.
Yep.
Which is very out of nowhere. And what the fuck? And then Mike goes to his room, and the tall man's there and grabs him and pulls him into a door.
Yep.
And that's how this movie ends.
That's it. That's the whole movie.
Very abrupt, very weird.
Very strange.
Again, it's kind of that whole, it was all a dream, which is
very classic horror movie.
But also,
it wasn't a dream because the tall man got him anyway.
Feels like a cop-out. In either case, I described all that because I want to ask you, first of all, what you think, and then I'll kind of run down, I think, the more normal interpretations of this film.
There's a normal one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, hear me out. Everything that we think happened, or everything that we saw happen, is real. All the stuff with the tall man, all happened.
Okay.
He's in that pit. Mike goes home, falls asleep. This is a dream. The thing we're seeing where he wakes up and is talking to Reggie and then gets got by the tall man is a nightmare he's having after all of the events of the film.
Okay.
That makes the most sense to me.
Okay. Fair enough. Do you want me to tell you what I think are like the actual interpretations for this movie?
Sure.
Okay. So there are, I think, functionally two different interpretations for the ending of this movie. The first one is, I think, kind of the standalone interpretation of this film. So the interpretation that you should take if you're treating this as like a singular film.
Sure.
And this is the one that I think is more interesting because it frames this movie with a lot of undertones. But the idea is that everything before Mike wakes up from his dream and has that conversation with Mike is all like an internal look at, or has that conversation with Reggie, is all a conversation about how Mike is dealing with the grief of his brother's death.
Yeah.
and how he's essentially vilified the undertaker of the local funeral home because he's a representation of death for Mike, because he's taken his parents.
Now he took his brother.
And took his brother. And some of the more like scary and ephemeral parts of this film are essentially Mike losing his touch with reality as he lets his like imagination get the best of him.
And I mean, that totally makes sense when you look at some of the parts of the beginning of the movie where Mike's like talking to the fortune teller and being like, yeah, I think someone's going to take Jody away from me. Like, I don't want him to go. Like, he's trying to leave.
Yeah. And of course, the ending where the tall man reappears again is like him relapsing briefly. But I do think that's a fun interpretation of this movie because it makes the film all about how younger children, because Mike's 13, deal with death and grief, which is not like something we normally talk about in society and are used to, and how it can be like really scary and can be represented by just a really tall, almost alien force. And there's a lot of things that actually I think really support this read on the film. Like I do think it was somewhat intentional. For instance, a lot of the really horrifying aspects of this film, the very otherworldly parts of it, can be seen in Mike's room, like inspiration for them. I mean, we've talked about the tuning fork where we see Reggie playing with the tuning fork and kind of how that's mirrored in how the portal to the other world works. But also we see a bunch of like sci-fi horror stuff in Mike's room, which might explain why when he's creating this villain in his mind, why
it's a weird alien from another planet.
Weird alien thing. I mean, we've talked about a bunch about Jawas, but like Star Wars just came out. But I think another good example is, we know Mike's a big space nerd. There's a big picture of the moon on his wall. But like, guess what the moon is? A desolate planet, kind of like where the tall man's from.
Yeah. I also think it probably explains away a lot of the weird stuff where Mike is doing stuff that is not normal of a 13-year-old, like driving a car.
Or a motorcycle.
Yeah, or
perfectly well.
Using guns and drinking beer and cursing and saying just inane stuff that like a 13-year-old thinks would be cool to say in a situation.
Yeah. So I do think that's kind of like the kind of standalone interpretation of the film. I don't know if you like that.
I mean, I think it works.
I think it works pretty well, though.
I think it works and explains away a lot of the stuff that can be seen as weird.
Yeah. With that being said, the second interpretation, I think the one that you should take if you're going to view this more as a franchise, is the everything was real take. It's a little bit different than your take on the movie.
Sure.
Which is everything was real up until Mike wakes from the dream, and then that's the dream sequence. It's going to get a little bit weird here. My understanding some of this is implied in later films, but I'll try not to spoil anything.
Sure.
But the read that I've heard is that the portal that looks like, the tuning fork portal, it lets out this hum. And probably what it's doing is it's messing with the dimensions and like kind of folding it. It's a weird space bending thing. And when Reggie destroyed it,
oh no,
he essentially fucked with space in ways you're not supposed to.
Interesting.
And essentially what happened is all the events leading to Mike waking up from his dream were real. But Mike ends up getting transported from a dimension where him and his brother defeated the tall man and Reggie died into a dimension where they never defeated the tall man and Jody died in a car crash, but Reggie's alive. Because of weird dimensional shenanigans.
Weird space-time continuum bullshit.
Because of the portal explosion.
Okay.
And the reason the tall man shows up then at the end is because the tall man is like a multi-dimensional being that can inhabit like different bodies in different dimensions.
Makes sense.
And so he knows Mike knows. Anyways, that's the other read on it. It's less artsy.
Yeah.
More sci-fi horror.
Both work.
But it also makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense in like, but you can't really explain it. You know what I mean? Like there's no like.
It's kind of one of those endings where you could be like, oh, I could see this being explained away in later films.
Yeah, like I feel like there's not a lot of groundwork to set that ending up. But the other ending feels like it was built up and set up and made to work that way.
Yeah. Again, it's one ending works, I think, if you take this as a singular movie.
Yeah.
And the other ending works if there's sequels. So, again, I think it's how you want to read it. But if you don't have anything else to do in this section. I think we can go back to regular stuff.
No, I mean, I think we covered everything that was spoilery enough.
Okay. We'll be right back in a second. All right. Welcome back if you've left. If you're still here, hello. I guess if we're done talking about the film, you want to do recommendations?
Sure.
Okay.
If you like weird movies, this is pretty weird. And,
So- Weird movie.
weird in a good way. Which I know I say that a lot on the show because I'm a fan of weird, strange films. But this is definitely up there if you're want to watch something that just is
Weird and artsy.
weird and artsy in the way that, like, Suspiria is, but not as, like,
Art house.
art house and more, like, avant-garde weird.
Yeah. It's a
But
weird
it's cool.
film.
If you like the idea of the tall man and the way we described him, I think watching this film just for his performance is honestly pretty worth it. I think he does a fantastic job, and I really like him. If you want to start the franchise, I mean, this is the first one. There are 5 of them, and it's a pretty lengthy amount of time to watch, spanning decades. So it's cool. I like it.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. I think, we have your suggestions, but I think the big one for me, I'll put out 2 here. A, if you like anyone associated with this project, this is like the first horror movie from a pretty well-known at this point director, at least somewhat in the horror community, Coscarelli. So if you're a fan of him, I think it is worth checking out how he got his start in the industry. I know it's not his first movie, but first, I think, super successful one. But with that being said, I think the big reason to check out this film is just its fame and notoriety. I mean, the Phantasm franchise is really well known, and I hate to say it, but like for that reason alone, I think it's worth checking out so you know what the hubbub's about.
Mm-hmm.
And, for that reason, again, good to know what like the main character of this franchise is like. There's a couple main characters, but especially I'm talking about the tall man, who just the performance is absolutely amazing. And I think that's worth a watch alone for that.
Yeah.
That being said, rate it.
I'm in an interesting spot because I like this movie. I had a really good time watching it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's super duper fun, but I get where some people could have reservations about it and not enjoy themselves. So it's like, I would say I would give it anywhere from a 4 to a 4.5 for just purely my enjoyment. Like, I just liked the movie that much. Like, I had a good time with it. I like the music. I think the tall man's really good. I like the curveballs that it throws at you near the end. I think a lot of the weird ephemeral atmosphere stuff works, and like I particularly enjoy that type of film. So I think I'm gonna go 4.
All right.
Just to be fair, because I get that some people will not enjoy this sort of film.
Yeah. I think I'm also going to go with a 4. I think I was between a 3.5 and a 4. But, it's one of those movies where I think if you like it, you're really going to like it. But I think if you don't, you're just going to absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think is an issue that I had with Suspiria as well, where I'm like, this is a good movie, but if you don't like it, you're not going to like it.
You're not going to enjoy it, yeah.
Which is kind of a problem with more, like, ephemeral films like this. But that being said, I think what really pushes me from, like, a 3.5 to a 4 is just some of the performances and how some stuff is done. The tall man especially is just absolutely amazing. I think the film wouldn't have worked without that performance.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about it. There's actually like some pretty decent practical effects.
Yeah. We haven't talked about it. There's a lot of balls in this movie.
Yep.
They got balls.
There's one ball.
Yeah. Well, it could be multiple balls, but we only see it once.
Once.
Well, we see one twice.
We see one ball twice. Could be 2 balls. We don't know.
But yeah, this movie's got balls.
Movie has ball. 4 for the ball.
4 for the ball. You get an extra point for 1 ball. Every ball featured.
Every ball featured, exactly.
With that being said, go to the outtakes, I guess.
Yeah. We'll see you guys in a minute. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the outtake section for this episode of Beware the Board. I hope you're enjoying our review of Phantasm so far. I really like this movie. I think it's super duper weird, but also very, very fun. But without further ado, let's get into the outtakes. This first clip is a short conversation about funeral practices.
That's why it's better to bury yourself underground if you're going to bury yourself.
I don't want to get buried. I want to be cremated. Well, no, actually, I want to be hung up like Jesus Christ on like a scary catapult thing, but we're not going to talk about that.
We've talked about it on the podcast before.
Have we? This next clip is me predicting the future only by a little bit. I'm waiting for a jump scare or something. I'm actually quite scared right now.
You're always quite scared.
True.
What noise was that, Bob?
I was going to
Blah,
say
blah,
something,
blah.
and then it scared me. This next clip is me finally understanding Ben's description of the movie.
Do I need to spell it out for you, or do you want me to let you get it?
I'm not going to get it.
Okay. Bob, what's the name of the villain in this film? Did you get it?
I hate you, bro. You're a short little man.
I knew that's what you'd say.
God damn you. That's such a good joke. I can't. Oh, fucking asshole.
I'm surprised it took you that long to get it.
I wasn't thinking about it like that. You're
It was the
despicable.
first character name I read, too. I was
No,
like, I'm sure
yeah.
he's going to get it.
Yeah. This next clip is our reaction to what the ball in this movie can really do. Oh, he's getting choked out by the Undertaker.
I'm gonna come for you, Mr. Man. That was Hulk Hogan.
Oh, the balls have blades. He's really biting the shit out of him there. Oh! Oh! Oh my god, what the fuck? Why are these balls so dangerous? Ah! Oh! He's spewing blood everywhere. It's going to be horrendous to clean. This place is made of white marble. Did he piss himself?
Yeah. That's what happens when you die.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the outtakes. Do we have any announcements, Ben?
Yeah, we're doing another one of these.
Woo! I think it's the last one, right?
Maybe.
Currently planned last one.
Currently playing last one, unless we add anything else. But that's going to be Final Destination.
Oh, fuck yeah. I'm glad we're finally getting to it. I know you really like those movies.
Yep. The main character is going to be there. So.
Sweet.
Oh.
Did we talk about... Yeah.
A bunch of people are going to be there. Reggie's going to be there. I think Mike's going to be there.
Awesome.
From this movie.
Yeah.
So.
Is the tall man still kicking?
No, he died like a year or two ago.
Oh, that sucks, man. Dude's really cool.
He's, really cool. It was sad. So, yeah. We're going to be watching Final Destination next week. I like that movie. I never knew when we were going to cover it on the board.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of... I struggle with what category that would go into. Maybe if we ever suggested torture porn, but it's not necessarily in that genre.
I was about to say, I don't think it's in that genre at all. That feels like a bit of a cop-out.
It does, but I don't know. So this is kind of like a good opportunity to cover the first one.
And then once it's like we've started it, whenever we go to cover more series, we can just watch them all.
Yep. In either case, that'll be a lot of fun. Not sure when this one's coming out. It'll come out in a couple days from now. Watch that episode if you want to see if we're doing more. Otherwise, usual spiel. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, other podcasting specific sites. If you're checking us out on any of those, please give us a quick review or a rating. That really helps us out with getting seen by other people there. You could also recommend us to a friend. We have a ton of content now, and that's the best way to get us seen by other people. Share us around. Pass the ball, some might say.
God damn you.
In either case, while it's a bit weird, we're also over on YouTube, which, while not the best for audio-only content, does help us out. We can see all your likes, subscriptions, views, stuff like that. And it's probably the best way to show us that you guys are enjoying the podcast. It's much better than our RSS feed, which is really hard to read the statistics of. With that being said, though, YouTube does have a couple cool tools you might appreciate. There's a bell button, which lets you get notified whenever we post something new, especially stuff that's out of our usual schedule, such as this. But YouTube also has a cool search function on our channel, which lets you search keywords in all our videos. So in case you're looking for like a specific movie to see if we've covered it, that's a good way to check because we've covered
a lot of movies.
A lot. Sometimes I forget how many we've covered, but
I forget a lot how many we've covered.
It's nearly 200.
We're getting there.
We're like in the 170s, 180s as of
Probably
recording
at
this.
180s.
Yeah. Search functions. Real handy. Otherwise, kind of the big thing with YouTube is it's one of the two major places to communicate with us with. You can go into the comment section of a specific video, or you can go over to Twitter @BewareTheBoard and go talk to Bob. Or you can just watch him from the bushes as
Don't
he
watch me from the... Nope.
maybe
Mm-mm.
hangs out with a special lady friend.
Don't do that. That's weird and creepy. Just, maybe
pretty
maybe
lady.
announce yourself by running out of the bushes screaming so I can deal with it. Like Ben said, check us out on Twitter @BewareTheBoard. It's where we post updates about the show, information about the show. Basically, if there's anything you want to know about the show, it goes on our Twitter. On Mondays, I post a spoiler post for that week's worth of episodes, which is a hidden movie cover you can reveal so you can watch the film before we do. So in the episodes, you don't get any spoilers, and we're being vague about stuff you know what we're talking about. Then on Fridays, or whatever other day an episode goes live, I always post a link to the episode on our Twitter. So if you've missed an upload or want to know when someone up, there's always a link there. Last thing, we do short form content for the show on TikTok @BewareTheBoard and on YouTube Shorts. So if you like the short form content and want to support the show, check us out there @BewareTheBoard on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. Ben, I think that's it.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, see you guys next time.